Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm still thinking about Janet's response to the quantum realm. Scott wrote an entire book about his journey to the QR, and according to Endgame, he only felt about 5 hours pass while trapped inside during the blip. Janet lived down there for decades, and she outright refused to discuss her time in the pocket dimension with her family, despite the fact that her knowledge could have prepared the Lang/Pym/Van Dyne fam for their quest. Why was Janet so much more keen to venture back into the quantum realm in previous films? Today, I'm breaking down Janet's relationship with the QR to speculate on her true feelings about her time spent inside. And look, I get it. The simple answer is that Janet was written this way because it worked out better for the plot, Whitney. We saw something similar happen to Wanda's character in Multiverse of Madness. Although she made a lot of positive progress towards accepting the loss of her family at the end of WandaVision, MOM saw her decline back into grief to move the MCU's plot forward. But Janet's trajectory is equally baffling and fascinating. Let's start at the beginning. In the first Ant-Man, we learned that back in 1987, Janet and Hank left young Hope at home while they flew off to disengage a Soviet missile headed for the United States. In order to break through the ICB's titanium outer shell, Janet turned off her quantum regulator, allowing her to go subatomic to slip through the cracks. Unfortunately, she was lost to the quantum realm, too small to return. But in Ants 2, we learned that Janet actually found a way to communicate with Scott. In the aftermath of his brief time in the quantum realm when he went subatomic to defeat Darren Cross at the end of Ants 1, Janet forms a quantum entanglement with his consciousness. This neuroconnection allows her to convey messages to Scott all the way from the quantum realm, sending him her memories as visions whenever a tunnel to the quantum realm is online. After Hope and Hank create a stable portal to rescue her, she fully possesses Scott's body, allowing her to physically speak through him and even perform tasks using his meat suit. She's like a tiny insect version of the demon from The Exorcist, minus all the head spinning and vomiting on priests and stuff. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I started feeling like I had to make a choice, have an IPA at trivia night or skip my morning jog. That is until I found Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Just remember to drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give Z-Biotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/newrockstars or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use New Rockstars at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Just head to zbiotics.com/newrockstars and use the code newrockstars at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode. Using Scott as a puppet, Janet is even able to input her exact coordinates in the QR, pinpointing the specific location where Hank and Hope needed to scoop her up. After Janet returns to 616 and uses her quantum energy to stabilize Ava Star's molecular disequilibrium, the group of four set to work creating an even better, more stable portal back to the quantum realm. Janet instructed Scott to make a quick trip, harvest some medicinal quantum energy for Ava, and return without being eaten by tardigrades. But unfortunately, Thanos snaps Hank, Janet, and Hope out of existence before they can bring him back. So here's where my questions begin. Why was Janet okay with communicating with Scott from the quantum realm in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but isn't cool with Cassie sending a signal down there in Quantumania? This one is relatively easy to answer and comes down to movie science. While Hank describes Cassie's quantum mapping device as a subatomic Hubble telescope, Cassie's explanation proves that it's less of an optical telescope like the Hubble and more of a sonar mapping device or a radio telescope. Like echolocation, Cassie is sending constant signals all across the QR so that she can build a map based on how they bounce back. So while Cassie's quantum telescope sent and received signals from the QR, akin to a two-way radio as she simplifies it, Janet was essentially communicating with Scott on a one-way radio. When Janet is possessing Scott, Hope actually makes the observation that she put an antenna in Scott's head, basically a one-way receiver. Scott wasn't able to send messages back to Janet. It's not like they were having to and fro conversations with one another. She was sending him visions and messages until shit started to hit the fan and it became absolutely necessary for her to pilot his body. Because she was sending out a one-way signal in the past, I think that's why she was okay with prior communication from the quantum realm. Furthermore, Scott Janet actually does show concern about the atomic frequencies the Pyms use once they start of pinpointing her location in the quantum realm. Hank suggests that they track her transmission using subatomic frequencies between 0.2 and 0.9, and she tells him to tweak them down to 0.4 and 0.6. While Hank insists that that range is too narrow, Janet pushes back, and ultimately Hank agrees to tighten the range to 0.3 and 0.7. Now, why would Janet want to reduce the amount of frequencies they're scanning? Possibly because their scanning tech, the same tech that Cassie studied for her device, used similar two-way sonar tech that outputs signals in order to pinpoint locations. Is it possible that Janet wanted them to reduce their scanned frequencies not only to speed up her extraction, but also to limit the possible frequencies Kang could catch them on? It'd make sense that Janet would want them to make the smallest footprint possible when touching down into the QR. Janet also set a time limit for her family once they had her coordinates. They only had a 2-hour window to find her before her location shifted in space-time. According to her, she would be a century away if they missed her exact location. But I actually think it's possible that Janet set a timer for another reason. Perhaps, in addition to time displacement, she was worried that Kang would intercept their journey if her family took too long to find her. By keeping their jump into the quantum realm quiet and short, they'd minimize any blips they'd make on Kang's radar. Cassie's machine, on the other hand, has a huge, sprawling microverse to map, and likely has to do the opposite to work optimally. And once that machine's made enough noise during any of its test runs, MODOK would know what to look for when it turned back on. Here's another question though. Why was Janet totally cool with Scott venturing back into the QR to fetch more quantum energy? The only thing she warns him about is running into tardigrades. She just lets her pseudo-son-in-law go on a Postmates errand to pick up a quantum energy prescription for a girl who tried to murder him, in a realm where she knows that Kang's abs are in charge. You could argue that the quantum realm is unknowably huge, and that Kang might not get a notification from his quantum ring doorbell every single time any being enters this vast reality. But how was she able to find Scott without having previously met him? Did she build some sort of notification device to alert her if Hank's suit ever entered the quantum realm? Was it just dumb luck that she was at the same point in the QR as Scott, and even dumber luck that she had the tech or power to place an antenna into his head? Or maybe it wasn't just dumb luck. Remember, Janet touched Kang's neurokinetic chair and got a glimpse into his mind. This means that Janet was able to seamlessly interface with his tech in that moment, tech that Kang uses to observe and traverse timelines. Is it possible that somehow through his time observing or probability analyzing tech, she was able to briefly see an alternative way out of the QR, just enough to know roughly where to be and what to do to escape? My headcanon is that her sole focus and desire to get home to Hope mixed briefly with Kang's tech, and she was imprinted with a vision or path that would make that happen. Similar to how Scott and Hope coming together in the probability storm reduced all possibilities to one, Janet's determination and focus allowed her to turn a possibility into a reality. But why was Janet so cagey about explaining her adventures, or acts of terrorism, depending on who you ask, in the quantum realm? Like, I get why she didn't want to admit that she f***ed Bill Murray, yeesh, but why didn't she warn her family about Kang? Obviously, she was ashamed of the fact that she nearly helped him escape, but she could have skirted around that part at least. Like, hey guys, don't send a two-way signal to the quantum realm because there's a bad guy down there who might get loose if you do. It would have sufficed if she just didn't want to tell him the truth. It does seem odd that she freaked out harder about her adoptive granddaughter's quantum cartography than she did about Scott dipping into the realm for a double scoop of quantum energy. And again, the simple answer is because this was a plot contrivance to put Quantumania's story into motion. I admit that I could totally be reading way too much into this, but just for funsies, what if there's another reason why Janet grew more paranoid and closed off about discussing the quantum realm with her family? What if Janet had started to receive signals from the quantum realm like the ones she used to send to Scott? I don't think that Kang possessed her body or anything like that, but perhaps he or MODOK found a way to neuroconnect to Janet from the QR like she did back in Ants 2. A possible quantum entanglement with Kang, or another quantum entity, could explain why Janet grew increasingly fearful of the QR. After all, Cassie and Hank were experimenting with the two-way quantum radio prior to her showing it off to the rest of the family. Someone from the quantum realm could have become quantum entangled with Janet when she arrived back into the 616 in Ant-Man 2, just like she had with Scott after Ant-Man 1. Like I mentioned earlier, Janet initially sent Scott messages in his dreams, such as visions of her and Hope playing hide and seek in a wardrobe. Perhaps she began having similar dreams when Cassie started her initial special tests. And that's when she started clamming up about the QR. Kinda like Scott coming to the realization that things definitely aren't fine at the end of Quantumania, those dreams could have shattered the safe fantasy world that she convinced herself she was living in. It's possible that this epiphany could have triggered the traumatic memories from being on the run from Kang and the QR, and her response to questions about the QR was to avoid this topic entirely. These are just some of my theories about Janet's experience with Kang in the quantum realm, but I want to know what you guys think in the comments. Why do y'all think she avoided telling Hank, Hope, Cassie, and Scott about the Conqueror? Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Whitney Puppy, follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love, and thanks for watching. Bye!